The worst argument in gaming.
It's just nostalgia.
It's not just nostalgia, all right? It's my feelings.
I can't begin to tell you how many times I've read some variation of this phrase whenever reading discourse online in relation to almost anything, but especially entertainment. Books, movies, TV shows, and of course,
Games. Um, but I don't know. Books? It's like whenever you're reading a book or anything like that, it's like for the most part, um, well, well, the whole nostalgia thing. Books are like set in stone, and like the only way to interact with a book is like you just read it, and then the thing that differs from reader to reader is how like their imagination. So to say a book is like nostalgia is good only because nostalgia is different than saying like I don't know, a game is good only because nostalgia, because like I don't know who's to say like like what makes a good like I don't know book or like a good story or whatever. And then it gets into that whole thing, that argument of, if you're like a book writer or a storyteller, what type of audience are you catering to? I think musicians go through this. Like, you can be like a high level skilled musician and you want to like make an album. Well, who are you going to make the album for? Are you going to make the album for like the other 1% of musicians where it's just like fucking solo shredding or whatever, like you're on guitar or whatever, and it's just like it sounds like mishmash, it's just it sounds ridiculous. And to like a regular person is not musically inclined, like that it won't really sound that good, you know so like who are you making your thing for? Who are you making the album for? Are you going to make the album for like the other top 1% of people that can like appreciate all the skill and excellence that go into like an entire solo album or whatever? Or are you going to like tone down the skill and just make something that sounds good and appeal to like the masses versus you're just going to solo and just appeal to like that other like 1%? So I try to apply that to like maybe books, and I don't know, maybe you can apply that to like TV shows, because you got to have like some sort of script or whatever for like a TV show or whatever, and people are gonna like act out the shit and whatever, and you could like argue, oh, that's good acting, that's bad acting, oh, it's a good story for the show, it's a bad story for the show. A show was only good because of the nostalgia or whatever. Like everything else about it was actually just bad. I don't know.
video games.
You're just blinded by nostalgia.
I don't get a lot of negative comments, but when I do, this is the most common critique in my comment section. A fairly weak critique if you ask me, but I do acknowledge that nostalgia can absolutely be a powerful thing.
Yeah.
It will definitely blind you if you don't know how to look at things objectively.
So like, I mean, but like as you're experiencing a thing for the first time, nostalgia is not the word I'm thinking of, honestly. Like the first time I saw Mad Max Fury Road, I wasn't thinking, oh, this is so nostalgic. I was thinking, holy shit, this is awesome. And I can go back and watch it and it's still awesome. So I don't know.
But often overlooked, so can recency bias. Now let's define these terms so we're on the same page here. Nostalgia is a sentimental longing or wistful affection for the past, typically for a period or place with happy personal associations. So someone who might view the good old days to be better than they actually were because of where they were at that time personally in their life.
Longing for the past, wishful. I mean, who's to say at the time? Because like, if we go by that, then it's like it takes out of the equation the goodness or the badness of it, like the skillfulness of the writing or the shittiness of the writing for like a good, bad, and the ugly or whatever. Like maybe at the time it was like top tier, like I don't know, writing, acting, set pieces, and I don't know, vibe or whatever. But I don't know. As time goes on, this is all it. Everything just becomes like in retrospect type deal.
Bittersweet feelings towards moments in the past. Recency bias is the cognitive bias that favors recent events over historic ones. Memory bias. So almost the exact opposite of nostalgia.
Right.
Meaning people tend to make conclusions about things based on recent events, often leading them to make more emotionally based decisions rather than rational ones.
Right.
Recency bias tends to place too much emphasis on the experiences that are freshest in your memory, even if they aren't the most reliable. Meaning, people tend to forget, especially if it was a long time ago.
Okay, so there's like a crossroads here. You have nostalgia, which is like that stuff in the past was really good, versus recency bias, which is the stuff that I just experienced was really good. So I think, I don't know. When you apply it to video games, it's like, that's a tough one. Is somebody just having some recency bias or somebody just being nostalgic?
Now, swinging too far in one direction on this chart will easily blind you. Now, you've probably heard of the term honeymoon phase, often associated with the early stages of a relationship.
Okay, you can apply the honeymoon phase to both of those arguments, though. There was the honeymoon phase at this time, and then as time goes on, you, I don't know, forget about that thing, but it still happened. And then you experience this other thing, and oh, there's a honeymoon phase right there because it's a thing. And then time goes on.
But can also be applied to many aspects of life.
Yeah.
Buying a new car, loving a new restaurant, enjoying a new job, or playing a new video game. And as someone who plays both old games and new games all the time, there are some games released today that are fantastic, and plenty more that are worse. But largely,
Is that
I would
Redfall?
say that gaming, especially AAA gaming, has gotten much worse over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Sure, the graphical technology has improved, but the art styles have gotten more stale. Sure, there's more voice lines and dialogue than ever before, but the quality of the writing and dialogue has declined.
And he's probably, saying like as a majority type thing, Yeah, are there some games that are outliers and are exceptions to this? Sure, but for the majority, we're just talking about in like general.
Being written by what feels like children. And yeah, there's constant live service support, but the games are buggier than ever before.
Yep.
And the game's foundation is as shallow as a puddle. Now, I wanted to take a look at two examples that made me want to discuss this recency bias versus nostalgia in relation to my channel. And the first is about Destiny, and the second is about Fallout New Vegas. We're going to take a look at Lightfall. Actually, no, we're going to take a look at Witch Queen versus Taken King for a second.
Oh, dang.
Now, you are more than welcome to have your own opinions here, and if you like Witch Queen more than Taken King, fantastic. Don't let me change your mind. But I prefer the Taken King expansion. And just saying that, you already know there's a bunch of D2 fans saying,
Yep, blinded by nostalgia.
And I would say that person is likely blinded by recency bias.
Oh, okay. So what, like the first expansion to Destiny 2 versus like the most recent expansion to Destiny 2, I take it?
But maybe in reality, we might just value different things. I mean, largely these expansions brought the same things. A new campaign, a new destination, new quests, new exotics, new armor sets and weapons. But Taken King had 9 PvP maps, 8 at launch, and 1 more launching a month later. 3 new PvP modes, plus 5 Vanguard strikes, 4 at launch, and 1 more a few months later. The Witch Queen had 0 PvP maps, 1 remake a few months later, and 2 strikes.
Oh, dang.
So the expansions were about neck and neck content-wise, up to a certain point. I mean, Taken King still did deliver more exotics, 18 weapons versus 8, and 10 armor pieces versus 6, and more legendary weapons and armor and quests.
Oh, dang.
But really what I'm talking about is the fact that Taken King brought so much good core content compared to Witch Queen. And for me, I value having more strikes and PvP maps than I do about having a Season of the Whatever launch alongside the expansion for an extra $10. Now, if you love seasonal content, you probably like the Witch Queen more. Or maybe you like the campaign more, and that's fair enough. But 9 maps versus 0, and 5 strikes versus 2, and 18 exotic weapons versus 8 isn't nostalgia. This is just a fact.
Dang, bro. This This dude is pissed about Destiny 2, I take it. Oh my god. We found it. Oh man, I don't even play Destiny 2.
Taken King brought more of what I personally value for the game, meaning lots of strikes, PvP maps, and much more earnable loot. And maybe you don't want those things in Destiny. Maybe you love grinding artifacts and weekly login vendor quests and playing the seasonal content. It's fine if we want different things inside of Destiny, but just screeching nostalgia only makes you look like a dumbass when we actually compare apples to apples, because it really isn't an argument at all.
This is argument.
Fallout.
Talking to the wall. Yeah. I mean, complaining about, your most recent expansion not having content, or like enough content or comparable content to like something you did in the past, I think that's pretty reasonable, to be honest.
Many of you are probably well aware of my love for New Vegas, as I've brought it up
New Vegas is goated
several times in recent videos, and I've praised various aspects of the quest design, the writing, and the immersive world, and I've said how I prefer it to Fallout 4. So of course, even there, I see
That's just nostalgia
comments. And the reason I find this one funny is I played Fallout 4 first. It was my first Fallout game.
Dang!
And I enjoyed
hit him with the turntable.
it, but didn't love it. It was one of those I'll probably never replay it kind of games, and it left me pretty uninterested in the franchise as a whole. I figured all the games were similar.
Bro, I have never met someone that played like a newer game first and then was just like, yeah, I'm gonna go backwards. And then them to like the older game. That is like the ultimate like nostalgia versus recency bias like diss. It's like, oh, the newer one sucked. The old one was better. Dang. Fallout fans are heated.
But in 2020, a friend of mine convinced me to play New Vegas for the first time. And I was hesitant,
I mean, I'm always hesitant to playing like older games just because it's like, can I bear myself to play with the old graphics, the old mechanics, and like so on and so forth? It's not gonna like older games. They just feel like more robotic. All right, they don't feel as good. All right, with the modern amenities of modern gaming. So I understand you like a person not wanting to go back and play like an older game.
Didn't love Fallout 4. New Vegas was a bit dated at this point, but eventually I caved. I bought it on sale for like $5 and began the game. Completely vanilla, no mods, and dude, I have now played New Vegas as well as all the DLCs 4 separate times.
Damn, that's more than me. Holy. What did I do? I think I played New Vegas twice or whatever. God dang. That's a grinder. That is a Fallout enjoyer.
I've put in hundreds of hours since then, and just finished my first modded playthrough, and just began another actually. The game is a literal masterpiece.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe I was too harsh on Fallout 4, and played through it again after my second time through New Vegas.
Dang.
I enjoyed Fallout 4 more the second time around, but it still doesn't hold a candle to New Vegas for me. I mean, just look at the quest design of New Vegas compared to Fallout 4, or even Fallout 3, which I also played after New Vegas and thought was just okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now you'd think that if nostalgia was a factor, I'd be very nostalgic for Fallout 4. I played it 4 years before I ever played New Vegas in 2020. And maybe you'd say that 2016 was a bad year or something for me, so I associate games that I played that year as bad, but no, I played Witcher 3 that year as well, and that game I've also put hundreds of hours into. And if you're curious why I didn't play these two games till a year after they released, well, it's because I was addicted to Destiny for
all that time. I mean, bro, don't even feel bad. I haven't played Destiny 2, like 1 or 2 ever, and then I haven't even played Witcher at all, alright? So
2015. Some people say I'm nostalgic for old graphics, which also isn't true. Graphics can be good or bad. I do not care about graphics or realism. Art style?
That depends on the game, really. Like, I don't know. Like, certain games, I can put up with bad graphics, but then other games, I'm just like, it's just like, for example, maybe I don't think I could go back and play, like, PlayStation 1 games or whatever. Maybe to some degree, like, PS2 or whatever, where everything's, like, super pixelated or just polygons or whatever. Your legs are just rectangles and whatever. To something like more stylized, like, I don't know, Borderlands or something like what was it? Like, I think I could go back and play original Shadow of the Colossus, like on PlayStation 2. And everyone's like back in the day, like, oh my god, this is art, or whatever. But like, if I were to go back and play it, I would still be able to play it or whatever.
And world design is all that matters to me. And good graphics and good art style aren't mutually exclusive either.
Yeah.
Both can exist simultaneously. Games like Dishonored and BioShock look incredible both graphically and artistically.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas games like Forspoken prove that generic realism is less exciting than beautiful artistry.
Yeah.
And
like, even in, what was it, in Dishonored and BioShock, even like the OG versions of those games, like the non-remastered versions, are like, they're still good enough, you know?
even games with dated graphics like New Vegas can still be incredibly immersive.
Yeah.
And besides those two games, there's been a lot of generalization
Oblivion.
about nostalgia, not just on my channel, but again, in online discourse as a whole. And it's become somewhat of a trend to use it as an argument over the last few years because 10 plus years ago, you almost never heard people throwing around the word nostalgia when people discussed movies or TV shows or video games. They would just compare and critique the media at face value. There was a bit more honesty in the discourse. People weren't so emotionally attached to their side of the argument. Not that there weren't exceptions to that, of course, but generally you could compare something like Ocarina of Time to Twilight Princess, and people wouldn't just be saying to each other that they're blinded by nostalgia.
Yeah, like honestly, I don't think I could go back and play Ocarina of Time. That's like too far for me, but that's just me, you know?
If they thought Ocarina was the better game. They would just agree to disagree after combing through some objective reasoning and call it a day. But now if you say something like, you know, the original God of War games were more fun and had a better story than 2018 or Ragnarok.
You're blinded by nostalgia.
Just because Kratos is now depressed and has a kid and the graphics and cinematic camera angles are the priority doesn't mean it's a better story or video game.
Oh.
And I know a lot of you might love the new God of War games. Again, that's fantastic for you. But I prefer my Kratos doing badass shit like this, rather than dealing with the very slow-moving cinematic camera view combat and quick-time event platforming in 2018 and Ragnarok.
I mean, yes, it's the same IP, but I mean, they're kind of like different games, you know? Like the other God of War, it kind of felt more like Devil May Cry, like, and this one, I mean, honestly, they're both still like Devil May Cry. I don't know, but I don't know. The old ones just seem like you could like jump everywhere, do everything. It's just they literally just slowed the combat down and put the camera right behind Kratos is all.
It's not being blinded by nostalgia to prefer the gameplay of the originals. In 2018, every headline said that God of War 2018 finally gave the franchise a good emotional story, as if the originals weren't also filled with emotional drama and tense character developing moments.
Huh, that is a good point. Like the OG God of Wars did have a good story. But because they lacked, you know, the fancy camera angles and whatnot, I guess he's saying that it wasn't like, I don't know, on the forefront with all the emotion, because you can only have like so emotion with Kratos just standing here. I forgot the story of God of War or whatever. Like I forgot who this is. This isn't his wife, or maybe like a combat brother or something.
Like when you kill Athena in God of War 2 and she informs Kratos that Zeus is his father, and Kratos is basically in denial. Then in God of War 3, you finally get to beat the fucking shit out of Zeus till the screen is so bloody you can't even see.
Dang.
You're just in this blind rage as an act of revenge against Zeus for abandoning you, his own son. Again, just because the story doesn't try to be ultra realistic with Gen Z friendly dialogue doesn't mean the original stories weren't emotionally impactful. And I'm not even saying that God of War games were the golden standard for storytelling in gaming, because they weren't, but the best story moments in the new God of War game titles to me are when Kratos is reflecting on moments from the original games. Now I know that gaming has changed. The audience, the trends, the social climate,
Yeah.
I get it. Younger audience, more casuals. I also...
Yeah, but the whole thing of like, oh, younger audience, like, it's not like the audience has really like changed, like playing video games. It's like, yes, there are probably more people playing video games now because it's more accepted. Therefore, like a large portion of that audience is still gonna tend to be younger, but it's not like, oh my god, video games were for, I don't know, 12-year-olds before, And now in 2023, all of a sudden, the audience, the video game audience is now just younger. Oh, they're 10-year-olds. It's like, what? What logic is that? That makes no sense. Just make like age appropriate like stories and like just be a good storyteller for fuck's sake.
So get that. And I don't hate young gamers or casuals. I play games pretty casually as there just isn't enough time in the day to play as much as I'd like. But I'm also not going to pretend that gaming hasn't changed for the worse to cater to broader audiences, like young and casual gamers. Or unfortunately, to appeal to the
Yeah, but like there's still like a good amount of video games that are for like an older audience, you know? I'm sure if I thought like for 2 seconds like I could figure out some like mature rated games, or not even mature rated. A game doesn't have to be mature for it to be like a good like story driven game for an adult audience, you know?
Twitter bots who don't even play video games and just love to bitch and complain about how problematic it is that Witcher 3 is too white or Elden Ring is
so
sexist.
Stupid.
And that's why games that are made for Twitter dorks always flop, because they don't buy or play video games. They don't represent the gaming community at all. But I'm getting a bit off topic here. Nostalgia versus recency bias. Both of these things can blind us. Blindly saying an old game is better than a new one without any real objective.
Bro, objectively, Assassin's Creed was hard as fuck to play, all right? It was, yeah, they had the whole parkour thing and like the puppeteer the buttons and whatnot, but like, bro, it was hard to control Altair, all right? If you wanted to go like up, sometimes he would go like that way, or sometimes if you wanted to hit a diagonal, he'd be like, did you want to go to the right? You know? But like, even with like the story, have the stories been like that much like watered down from like AC OG versus AC 2014?
Reasoning behind it makes you likely blinded by nostalgia. If you're playing a new game you just bought and you're enjoying it while others are criticizing
Halo Infinite versus Halo, like, oh, Halo 3. Well, I mean, shit, bro. Anything from like Halo 1, 2, and 3 is just goated, and anything from like 3, 4, 3 is just ass.
It for being worse than its predecessor, and your knee-jerk reaction is to start attacking them and say that the new game is better, and tell those people they're blinded by nostalgia without any objective reasoning on your end either, then you might be blinded by recency bias. And fanaticism of any kind on this chart will kill any chance of improvement. The industry is obsessed with selling nostalgia for all the wrong reasons right now, rehashing old material and lacking innovation, and gamers are blinded by recency bias, just eating up and defending the corporations because they've forgotten how good gaming can be. It's time to stop with this nonsense. You know, critiquing art is the best way to see it improve. When we stop critiquing, we start settling, which is how the AAA industry ended up where it is today. Constructive criticism is very helpful, and sometimes getting slapped across the face with some painful but true criticism can be a big wake-up call to really implement some much-needed changes. I look at my own short time here on YouTube creating videos, and I'm constantly getting feedback in more ways than just the comment section. But in the comment section, some of the harshest critiques I've received has led to me improving the quality of my videos. And even if some of the critiques about me have been wrong, or someone misunderstood me, it doesn't disregard how I may have come across to certain viewers. So that pushes me to articulate and flesh out my thoughts on something a little bit more next time, as to better illustrate a point I'm trying to make, or improve my editing and my use of examples. Taking criticism to heart, at least a little bit, you know, don't dwell on the hurtful parts, but really taking a step back and looking at the criticism objectively can give you a real advantage that most people lack. Admitting you might have been wrong about something, or that you can improve somewhere. That is the first real step to growth. And that's why it's so important to critique media, from movies and video games to YouTube videos like my own. Settling for mediocrity only leads to more mediocrity. Capitalism absolutely does breed innovation, but capitalism also breeds greed. And if you settle for mediocrity, then a capitalist won't bother innovating anymore. They will just pump out mediocrity if the consumer accepts it. And unfortunately, capitalism is holding art hostage right now. Ideally, the best artists would compete for who can make the best art, and that would sell the most tickets, or sell the most copies. But
Oh,
instead, it's a competition for who can rehash and resell the most, take as little risk as possible, and spend as little as possible, yet still try to rake in billions. Now, there's nothing wrong with wanting to turn a profit, but I miss when media would try to do more than just that. The only way to combat this is to beef up your standards a little bit. Stop making excuses for buggy games, poorly written ones, and microtransaction-filled slop.
Giga
Vote
true.
with your wallets. Use your money to support devs and companies doing right by their players. Nostalgia can absolutely affect how we see older games, but I really think a lot of gamers have just forgotten how good gaming can be. And when you actually go back and play an old game for the first time, you might realize that. Were there bad games back then too? Yes,
Oh, yeah.
of course. Not every game of the 6th or 7th generation were bangers, but as I pointed out in my last video, creativity and innovation has halted in recent years, with very few exceptions to that rule. But let me know what you guys think in the comments.
What a good video. The whole thing with like recency bias versus nostalgia, I think that's always going to be there. I don't know. I'm like the worst person to like ask, because all I do is I just play like aim trainers or whatever, because I am just so doomer about games or whatever. I'm just like, oh, okay. I guess I'll just go aim train or whatever. I don't know. Maybe I am kind of excited for Armored Core 6 though. That's coming up. So I don't know. That'll be like the first game I play in like years or whatever. So I don't know. I mean, that is a good point to make though. Like saying nostalgia is a bad argument versus recency bias is a worse argument. So yeah, I mean, it's just something to be aware of or whatever. Whatever you're like trying to figure out whether or not a game is good or bad. But I mean, yeah, I thought this was a good video. Freaking awesome. I want to see more. So yeah, that's pretty much it, man. Another banger. And yeah, that's it. I'll see you guys on the next one. Later.